Hey guys, it's WaifuGate here again. Today we're going to be doing the whole 5.0 slash interesting lists from leagues, where we kind of review lists and try to figure out what people are trying to set up against main deck, sideboard, etc., and like how it's positioned in the meta and why people kind of make the decisions that they do in regards to what they bring to a league and why. I just find this usually on MTG Goldfish here. You go to metagame, and I just click on the league button here, and I just go for the most reviewed. Now, this week is a little interesting because I'm recording this like as the bans are happening, sort of, for standard. As you guys know, Agent of Treachery is getting banned, Fires of Invention is getting banned, and Companions are getting an overhaul. I have a video on that as well. It's on the channel. It's pretty easy to find. But my reactions and stuff specifically on that. But here we're gonna jump right into the list here. This Sultai mid-range list. I hate it when people call this mid-range because it's not really mid-range. Mid-range to me is like creatures having a good matchup versus control and versus aggro. And this sort of fits the bill, but you only have like one creature, maybe two with Crassus, I guess, like two sets of creatures. So it just kind of tilts me when people don't call this Sultai ramp because that's what it's actually doing. But you know, being pedantic, set that aside for a moment. This list looked pretty good because it doesn't run Yorion, so it's a very compact, tight list. 29 lands is a bit heavy, but it makes sense because they have both Spiral and Uro here. So it's got Crassus for top end, no Nissa, interestingly enough. Usually when you have Crassus, you have Nissa as well. But I guess they're deciding to go Uro and just ramp with Uro and Growth Spiral and have a big enough Crassus, for maybe a Crassus for 4 pretty early on in the game to kind of hold off aggro a bit, make it a little harder for them to get in. They also have Tyrant Scorn, which helps against aggro and against other Uro lists. It can also... The most important part about this card, I think, like its main strength, is if the opponent doesn't have an active Teferi against Jeskai Luca. And like I said, this isn't going to be a huge consideration post the bans, but you can snipe the token that they're going to counter, that they're activating Luca's -2 on, in order to grab their agent. Like, you whiff their effect because they no longer have a target for it. So it's really, really nice to be able to bounce the token or kill the token in response. They have 3 board wipes here with 4 in the sideboard. That's pretty heavy. That's a pretty big commitment. But it makes sense since there are a lot of Lurrus lists, and this exiles not only Lurrus, but anything that they might want to get off of Lurrus to begin with. So prior to Lurrus even hitting the field, you can exile everything. And then the extinction event's very good against the Obosh lists right now. And I mean, those lists are going to be, I think, non-existent. And like I said, I made a video on that, like what decks I think are going to be popular and not popular and such. But I think this will still be a good sweeper card, though. It's just really, really nice. It hits a lot in the meta. Deals with sticky targets like Dream Trawler, where normally black has a very hard time dealing with those things. Like usually you have to be like, okay, I want you to sack a creature, and then you're kind of susceptible to them making an instant speed token or whatever else, so it's kind of difficult. I like the extinction event, though. They've got 4 casualties here. I think this is probably trying to hit like Fires of Invention. If you ramp fast enough, you might be able to get Jeskai Luca off of their fires and off of lands so that they have trouble like producing a Planeswalker plus a token in the same turn. And you can also take off their land, like you can snipe their Ardent Veil. And that's pretty important. I kind of like that. And then Thought Erasure, of course, is good. You can grab their Luca, grab Agent, grab whatever. And it helps you surveil to get extra lands, or if you're getting flooded out, you can choose to do something else. Like whether you're flooded or screwed, this card helps you most of the time. So it makes sense, like most of the choices. Lots of life gain, so like I imagine aggro has a pretty rough time versus this, save like, you know, maybe grabbing Uro with Claim the Firstborn and just OTKing someone with it. Just wrecking them hard, or like the same deal with the Crassus. Other than that, though, it's pretty good against aggro. 3 on Mordigos, I imagine, are for like Teferis, not Teferis, sorry, I misspoke. These are for Agent of Treachery, most likely. Sometimes in other matchups, it can be pretty useful. It's very dangerous to bring this in against Tamir Reclamation, though, which is sometimes what you will like to do. Thought Distortion's also pretty good against those grindy control decks, so I can understand this, like you White Yorion, etc. And like I said, some of those lists are dying out, but I think that you White Yorion might be okay, and Bant Yorion's probably fine as well, just because the game goes long enough to where that's just like an extra like value type deal for you. And that's normally what Yorion was anyway. Like Bant Control could sometimes save themselves against aggro by throwing down the 4/5 body out of nowhere. Being able to, or having to pay the 3 mana prior to casting him is also very rough, especially since it's set sorcery speed no matter what. So, you know, those decks will be a little more different now, but I think they're still viable to some extent. And the negates, of course, are just for sideboard. So I think this has a good matchup against a little bit. It's Sultai ramps always love-hate for me, like a love-hate relationship, because when it goes off and it feels good, it feels awesome. But sometimes you just are a little bit behind. If you miss a land drop in these ramp lists, it's way worse than any other list for the most part. Like if you miss just one land drop, you lose the advantage of your deck completely because you're supposed to be playing above curve. And if you're not, you're just gonna fail out. So I think this list is pretty interesting. It's also like untouched by the changes, like the bans. Like it's not running Agent of Treachery or anything else. You might change out your sideboard since you no longer need Unmoored Egos for agents. But other than that, like I think it's a pretty solid all around deck. Maybe I would like to see like 1 or 2 Nissas in this. I think, especially with the Triomes counting as forests, like you have really, really powerful plays, like being able to casualties a little bit earlier, or being able to casualties and hold up a counter spell post sideboard with the negates. And I like to see some type of some number of neutralizes would be nice, because you can always cycle those for a land drop or counter something really powerful from the opponent. I kind of like it. But this deck plays around Teferi with just trying to casualties or whatever instead of dealing with the counter wars. So pretty interesting. Let's move to the next one. Mardu Knights. Just looks like interesting that they're running Luris in this list. I really feel like the power from this list comes from like Embercleave, dude. Like if you're running Knights and you're not running Rotting Regisar and Embercleave, I'm sad about it. Like I want to get hit in the face with that when I'm fighting aggro. Like I just want them to have it sometimes. Like just that explosion is what makes those decks really powerful. Like you never know when that's going to happen. Or like if you can counter the Embercleave when they go to do their power play, it feels really good to come out of that as well. So I kind of like the idea of that. But this looks kind of interesting. Like they've got champions, they've got 1 Foulmire Knight that's a little awkward. Like I don't understand that. Like I guess like I would rather just run the 4 fight as ones or 3 dire tactics. Like I don't understand the 1-up here. Maybe it's okay though. I don't know. Maybe they did some number crunching. They're like, well, I don't really want another land, but this could draw me a land that I need. So I don't know. Well, this list is pretty butchered after the changes, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. I'm just trying to figure out like what this was set up against. I like the tech for deadweight here with Luris in the sideboard to fight other aggro lists. Like that's probably super useful versus like Jeskai Cycle to try to snipe the foxes before they get out of control. They can kind of deal with the stingers and such. So I kind of like that tech against other aggro lists, especially. Soul Guide Lanterns, of course, for Zenith Flare as well. and then a little bit of control with the D-Sparks and the Dire Tactics. And the 3 Duresses can kind of snipe Lukas, etc. Like I said, this is before the bans. But this deck is definitely dead as soon as the bans happen, so I'm probably just going to move along. I do like the Fight as One as a final note. Like, I really like this card because as an aggro player, or as a control player, aggro blows me out with this all the time, and I think it's really powerful. What's up, Monarch? How are you doing, man? We're recording a YouTube video real quick. We're just kind of chilling out for a minute. So, I mean, kind of interesting, but I'm disappointed at no Rotting Regicides or Embercleave. Pretty much the summary for that one. So this is the list that's been rocking around, the Citadel list, with 4 Trail of Crumbs, 3 Citadels, lots of cat stuff. This deck's super grindy and it's really hard to beat. It's the reason why I want to start running 2 to 3 Heliod's interventions. Aren't bans live already? No. I don't think so. They delayed it to Friday, I believe. That's why I was playing Monster Train earlier. So I don't think so. Sadly not. But yeah, getting back to this. This also doesn't have the weakness of companions. And I say weakness as in like the limitations is a better way to put it. The limitations, because they get the best of all worlds. They get back to running Priest and Mayhem Devil. And this is also like companion proof, you know, in regards to the bans and stuff and the changes. So this list is probably going to get way popular. I go over that in the other video where I kind of try to predict like what's going to happen with the meta and such. So I think this list is really, really strong. Very grindy. Lots of triggers in MTGA. If you love triggers, you love value, this is the deck for you. And this is the same deck that I've seen a lot of, even down to the one of Migration Path, which I think is actually a really cool tech, because you can cycle this, or you can get a land with it, which is awesome. Because it gets you 2 basic land types, so it like fixes you on mana, so you can have like 1 of each mana for this. It gets you triple black late game, because you can grab 2 black mana from that. It's just really, really flexible. I love it as the 1-of tech. That's probably my favorite part about the deck, aside from like the 4 Trail of Crumbs. But this is definitely the reason why I'm considering more Heliod's interventions in my sideboard for my U-White, which I'm making an article for. We've got 1 Claim the Firstborn, which is a little awkward, but sometimes in these open tournament lists, like I'm not sure, this is standard league, but a lot of people will do this in open tournament lists, so people have to respect the claim as a card, as an out. 4 Cindervines is awesome, really good against Reclamation, really good against Yorion, Jeskai, Luca Fires shenanigans, because it can blow up fires. Also deals damage whenever they cast a non-creature spell. So just very strong. And it does some burst damage when you pop it. Then we've got 2 more Corvolds for those grindy matchups, as if 1 wasn't enough to ruin the game. And then we've got 4 Duress for, you know, any Planeswalkers. Primarily Luca at this point. But like I said, like rotation's going to happen, so this can probably be kicked down to like 3, but I'm not an expert on the sideboarding stuff yet. I'm still trying to learn that myself when I go to design my own sideboards. I'm on like 3 hours of sleep too, so I apologize for like the low energy. If I sound tired, if I sound almost dead, it's because I am. I've been having some problems trying to get through the day here and there. I don't know what's wrong with me, but I'm trying to sort it out. I'm still trying to keep up with the YouTube stuff too, which is pretty rough, but it's worth it. I appreciate, like, I like trying to put out the content because it makes me feel like I've done something by the end of the week. So, but anyway, getting back to this, Soul Guide Lanterns for other Jund matchups, anything that runs cats, Zenith Flare, etc. Just really nice. Yeah, Mnemonic. When I woke up, it was like fine. Like I hit a perfect REM cycle and I felt good, but that was around like 6, man. And now it's like 6, 7 in the morning, like so many hours later, but I'm trying to get through it. All right, so there's that. Like this, I think this is like one of the best lists in Standard. There's not really much more to cover it. I think it has good matchups against just about everything. Sometimes aggro can just run it over, but you can usually gain enough life with food. Very strong. Tamir Reclamation. An oldie but a goodie. So we got the old Chemister's Insight. Ye old Chemister's Insight. One Storm's Wrath is pretty interesting. I don't see that too often. And no extra copies of it in the sideboard. Instead, they opt in for Flame Sweep. They've got 3 Scorching Dragonfires for opposing Uros. And, you know, of course, aggro in general. Like being able to snipe a cat or something with that is pretty nice if someone gets a little lazy with their triggers on Arena. We got Uro. Pretty standard. Usually you see 4, but I can understand the 3 of. We've got 28 lands, which is a little low, but not completely, unheard of. 3 neutralizes, 4 mystical disputes, so that's what, 7? 7, 8, 9 counter spells main board. It's not too bad. 9 counter spells and then 3 Shark Typhoons to counteract to fairies. Like you can still cycle them end of turn and get your Shark token to attack. I feel like that's what makes Mirror Reclamation a bit better nowadays. And Morning Less, how are you doing, man? What is up, dude? I'm currently on like 3 hours of sleep, so I'm trying to get through the YouTube stuff real quick. But if you guys like some keyboard ASMR, that's your dude right there. You might also stream Monster Train at some point. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know what his plans are for that, but he's pretty awesome. He is my roommate. So we've got... I've known the guy forever, too. What do we have for sideboard? Zenith Flare, Cat Oven. Aether Gust is... like, this should be main board, honestly. Like, it's so good. Being able to put... like, most decks run red or green, so it's just a 2-mana counter spell, basically. But I can understand the sideboard tech instead, since this is a tight list. 1 Fry to maybe catch the Teferi off guard. 2 Negates, 1 Tail's End. Pretty standard, just a lot of 1 and 2 ofs that people have to respect, especially if the deck list is open. People will look and be like, oh man, they might blow me out with this card. Also, if you're using a popular list like Tamir Reclamation and someone types in, Tamir Reclamation into MTG Goldfish or wherever, then they'll find this list and then respect stuff that's in this sideboard usually, so people will play around it, which is good and bad. If you're actually using the sideboard correctly, then kind of predictable, but that's just part of Magic. Just gotta guess better than the opponent. We got another Chemister's Insight in the sideboard, which is a little interesting. You don't usually see that. Usually it's like 1 or 2 main board, and then that's it. That's an interesting choice. Because this is super weak versus Teferi and versus Narset, so I don't know why you would really bring this in against Control most of the time. Because you should be dedicating, in my opinion, more resources to fighting Teferi so you can actually cast things at instant speed. So I'd like to see like more Fries to counteract that, for example, because this can't be countered and it just blows up Teferi. Same thing for Narset, you just blow up Narset. So like the cards that you lose to, I feel like you should be, strengthening your weaknesses against those in your sideboard, so that's a little weird. I understand the Night Pack because these are really good against aggro and against control in general, because a lot of people will sideboard out their sweepers against you. And we've got Mythos, which is like a counter to Elspeth Conquers Death. Like you can copy Elspeth's, make a token of it, exile their Elspeths, and then if they bounce the ECD, it's not so bad because it's just a token. You want to get some green drink? Oh yeah, that'd be awesome, man, because I still have to stay up until at least 2 p.m. today. So a couple more hours. That would be awesome, man. I would really appreciate that. I'll take some, what did we used to call it? Some lawn. Green drink sounds a lot more appetizing though. It's broccoli sprouts and spinach blended up for about 5 minutes or so with some ice, and usually we have mustard seed. Yeah, lawn. The aptly named lawn. I love how this is going up on YouTube too. It's awesome. It's not. It's actually kind of refreshing, honestly. It's kind of bitter. It's bitter, but it's really fine. It looks like this basically. You just eat this. It's like this mixed with this, but you don't get to actually see the octopus. It's more like the background for the octopus and the blended together, minus the octopus, because that's kind of sad and morbid. All right. Anyway, let's try to get back on point. Grixis Flash. All right, so we've got Umori. So this list is dead as soon as the companion thing is probably shifted, because it's not worth paying 3 mana to play this guy anymore. Like, this guy is just absolute garbage tier, I think. Because his strength is being able to come down on 4. If you're taking your turn off to pay 3 mana to put him into your hand, the game is over, you lost. You take such a huge tempo loss. And the downsides of not being able to run instances is just not okay. So you can see here they have flame sweeps as well for this. So they can sideboard this out and smoke screen into something else, which is pretty cool. I love decks that do this, but sadly we're going to see the death of them, or at least some of them. Because what this does is it restricts your deck. So companion. Each non-land in your starting deck shares a card type. If this is your chosen companion, you may cast it once from outside of the game. So basically what happens here is that everything has to share a type. So in this case, it's creatures. Everything shares a creature type. So you can't run non-creatures. So in their sideboard, they can trick people like, oh, they don't have counter spells with Umori, so they don't really play around that. And then you sideboard in counter spells, or you sideboard in like Shadow Spears or Flame Sweeps, and you just blow people out because they don't expect it. And I love that in card games, but I'm sad that, you know, this list isn't going to be able to do it anymore because of the tax on companions, basically, that's going to be hitting soon. So this has the good old Chamber Sentry. So people basically use these and this, so that way they have counters for one, so they dodge Heartless Act, I believe is what it's called. They dodge that card because it says destroy target creature with no counters on it. Maybe that's not the exact wording, but it's close. And then you get to mutate onto these, which is pretty cool. So, like, you mutate your Sea Dasher onto it. Phoenix is interesting. That's cool. I like the Phoenix. Insatiable Hunger, or no, not Hunger. Hemophage. I don't think I'm pronouncing that right. So 3 mana mutate. Death Touch. When this creature mutates, each opponent loses X life and you gain X life, where X is the number of times this creature is mutated. So like you at least get 1. You get at least 1 life. And if you double mutate this guy, it gets really insane. I had it. Nice. Hemophage. So it's just really crazy. Like if you start to put 2 of these on one creature, you get double triggers. So the second time you, like, let's say you go Stone Coil into this, into that again. The first time it does 1 life, and then you gain 1 life. The second time it goes 2 life, 2 life, I believe. So you gain 4, they lose 4, and it just gets really, really crazy. Especially with the Phoenix and everything else. Like, it gets really insane, man. And then the Pouncing Shore Shark, of course, to tempo out and mess with the opponent. Everything is also discounted if they have a Polywog symbiote. I'm tired. Oof. The Polywog. It's Baby Godzilla. I like Baby Godzilla for this case because that's easier to pronounce. Each creature spell you cast costs 1 less to cast if it has mutate. And then whenever you cast a creature spell, if it has mutate, draw a card, then discard a card. So this is like Cycle. You can draw, search for lands, chuck creatures if you need the lands, chuck the lands if you need the creatures, etc. It's just really nice. And then the Shadow, the sideboard's pretty interesting. I'm not sure about the 3 Shadow Spears, though. Kind of weird. Especially when you don't have like Dire Bats either to kind of target and destroy creatures. You're kind of just banking on Hemophage here to like carry you through the game and kind of penetrate through blockers and whatnot if they have flyers to block or if they're messing with you. So interesting list, but sadly it's dead to the changes to companions, I think. So hopefully next week's meta is more interesting, because right now, like, all of the lists that I have access to review, at least on MTG Goldfish, are older lists, and the bans are happening today, I think, or later on. It's supposed to release on Friday, tomorrow. So hopefully we can do something interesting with that. Maybe I can record 2 of the videos today and then save one and maybe do viewer decks tomorrow sometime. Do a review like this where people can come in. So if you guys are interested in that, stop by the stream around Saturday or Sunday. We'll be doing that, I think. And if we don't do it this week, we'll do it next week for sure. So appreciate you guys. I do one of these lists, like one of these reviews each week, and I'll be including the viewer one very soon as well. So if you guys have any questions, any comments, feel free to drop them in the comments below, or stop by the stream and talk. I usually stream from Tuesday until Sunday, so you can catch me there sometime. And yeah, I appreciate you guys, and I will see you guys very soon. And I apologize once again for the low energy, trying to get my sleep cycle back. Usually wreck it going from my days off into the work week with the streams. So apologize for that, and thanks again, and I'll see you guys soon.